Purim's on our minds, obviously, so it's very hard to start talking about, the PARSHA for this coming Shabbos. But I feel like we had to, because PARSHA's Tisa is very significant. It's a tremendous turning point for the Jewish people. We've got Chet Egel in this week's PARSHA, and everybody has to tackle with it in one way or the other. So you have to, push Purim aside for a few minutes, and we're going to talk about Chet Egel. Something that all the commentators grapple with is that, on the one hand, it's hard to say that the Jewish people did avodah zarah mamish, that they did true idolatry, because they just had a tremendous, amazing experience at Har Sinai. So how could that have happened? Well, at the same time, you can't justify what they did too much, because God is pretty upset at them in the parsha. It seems like being upset at them is warranted in some way. So you have to kind of straddle that line, and the Ramban has an approach that I think he does that well. You also have to explain Aharon's conduct. How is Aharon going about everything here? What are his motives? What does he think he's accomplishing by making the ego, seeming to play a very active role in it? And what exactly was the error, as we said, of Klal Yisrael? So the only pasuk that I'm quoting for you is the first one, because the Ramban says this one is key. This is the first pasuk in Perek Lamed Beis, where we talk about Chet Egel. Vayar ha'am ki boshesh Moshe l'redes min ha'ar. The entire nation saw that Moshe was delaying from coming down the mountain. And we typically think, by the way, that what that means is, I think Rashi tells us this from the Midrash, Moshe lets everybody know, I'm going to be back in 40 days and 40 nights. And they miscalculated. They thought the day that Moshe went up went towards the count, right? And therefore they made the mistake. They said, oh my gosh, they panicked. Moshe's not around. Perhaps they saw some type of image in the sky that seemed to indicate that Moshe's neshama had gone up, that he had passed away. But it's important to realize the Ramban doesn't really focus on this at any point. But Ibn Ezra and the Kuzari, they both their take on it is, actually Moshe didn't tell anybody how long he was going to be up there. He didn't know how long he was going to be up there. And, Klal Yisrael actually reasonably thought Moshe would be back down, maybe the next day, because Moshe's going up without any food or drink. They don't realize that he has this superhuman quality about him, or, that the Nisim can happen at Har Sinai, that Moshe doesn't need any food or drink. And, they expect him to come back down perhaps the next day. And, it actually takes a nice amount of time, according to Ibn Ezra and the Kuzari, for the people to, start, causing such a stir to the extent that Chet Egel happens. It doesn't happen until the 40th day. But right, if you look in the Psukim, there's no mention anywhere that Moshe actually tells the people how long he's going to be up at Har Sinai. But in any event, it's not so crucial to understanding what happened here. But it's just something that I thought we'd throw in. Vayikahal ha'am el ha'aron. So the entire nation gathers towards Aaron. Vayomru elav. They say to him, Kumasei lanu Elohim asher yelchu lefanenu. Please make for us Elohim. So how are we going to translate that? You have the Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan translation, the Living Torah. He says, make an oracle to lead us, right? And it's important to note, I don't think it really fleshes itself out in the English translation. This is going to be a crucial phrase, obviously. Yelchu is in the plural. It sounds like Elohim is a plural, to lead us, right? Because this man Moshe, who took us out of Egypt, our leader in the past, we have no idea what happened to him. So we need a replacement in some way, it seems. So I think the standard approach, this is of Rashi, that Elohim is translated as gods, and that makes sense for the plural. Make gods that can lead us. We want a replacement God because of the events that took place. But the Ramban, after quoting Rashi, doesn't like that approach, and he'll explain why. So the Ramban says, this pasuk, this is the key. The rest of the story is important as well, obviously, but this pasuk really gets you started in terms of understanding what exactly happened with Chet Egel and the people that carried it out. Clearly the Jewish people never thought that Moshe was the God, Elohim here in the sense of God. They never thought Moshe was actually divine. And that Moshe himself, through his own strengths and powers, took them out through signs and wonders. And therefore, what sense would there possibly be in them saying, if you're going to explain this literally, that they say, Moshe's gone, so let's make gods as a replacement. That doesn't make any sense. Moshe wasn't their God to begin with. For Od, additionally, keep a parish amru Elohim asher yelchu lefanenu. They specifically say that this Elohim, this being, however you want to translate Elohim, we'll get to that. The role of it was specifically to lead them. They didn't attribute some larger, more cosmic role to this thing that they're requesting of, that we should get into, that we should have reward in this world or in the next world. Clearly they weren't asking for gods, or even one God, the Ramban maintains. Okay, what they were really asking for was another Moshe. They wanted another Moshe. Amru. They said, Moshe shahor lanu haderech miMitzrayim vadhina. Moshe, the man who taught us the way, how to go about things from the time we left Egypt till this point. That's what they want another one of. Shahayu hamasaim al pi Hashem biad Moshe. They certainly knew that the travels were, Moshe leading, but through the guidance of Hashem. Hini aved mimenu, and that Moshe, that leader that we had, he's gone. Na'aselanu Moshe acher. Let's make another Moshe. Shayora haderech lefaninu al pi Hashem biado. That he'll be able to show us the way of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he'll be able to guide us. That's why there's mention of Moshe we don't have anymore. Not that we don't have a God anymore, chas v'shalom. Right? Lo ha'el asher ha'elam. Not that we don't have a God anymore, that God is hidden from us. Ki yitztarchu la'ish Elohim. What they needed was a man of God. Probably should have said Elohim there. That was the appropriate usage. Okay. They needed a new leader. That's what they were asking for. And the big question is, according to the Ramban's approach, how does the Egel accomplish that? Right, so we're going to have to get to that. But
also, why did they say Elohim? Or did they mean an Ish Elohim? Why didn't they just say Ish Elohim or Moshe?
Right, so I don't think Ramban's not going to take that head on, but I think he basically says although it's true the word Elohim very often means
could be a judge,
God. It could mean judge, it could mean a power, a leader of some sort. He probably means it in that way. He argues that Elohim should mean a leader more just from the force of the fact that the narrative is just untenable if you understand this as God. It just makes no sense. He doesn't focus on the language, but yes, it's important to point out the word Elohim can mean an individual of higher status, somebody that's a judge, somebody that is a leader of some sort. Okay. So we're going to explain exactly how the Egel is going to accomplish, the role of a new leader. Well, we'll see. It seems to be also untenable, but Ramban will get into that. You also have to say this idea that they weren't asking for a god, for an avodah zarah, for a real idol, based on the conversation that Moshe has with Aaron after Moshe comes back down. Why? Because right? Moshe says, he comes back down from the mountain, he sees the entire mess that's before him. He says to Aaron, what did this nation do to you that you have to bring the sin upon them? Meaning, what's going on here? What's Aaron's answer? He says the following, they said to me I should make it Elohim. And then I said, okay, who's got gold, who's got silver? They gave it to me, I threw it into the fire, we had an Egel. Right? And that's the end of the discussion there. It sounds like Aaron's trying to give some kind of excuse. He says, my master, please don't be upset at me. And then he goes on to give this whole story. If you understand this conversation to be talking about a God, the conversation essentially is as follows. Aaron, what are you doing? What's going on here? And Moshe, Aaron's response would be, well, they asked me to make an avodah zarah, so I figured, let's make an avodah zarah. You can't be mad at me. What's wrong with that? But, that would exactly be a reason to be mad at Aaron, the fact that he let that happen. This discussion obviously has to mean something more. Is the response of Aaron, it's because they asked me. Come on, you have to let it go. They asked me to make an avodah zarah. That's why it's okay. No, that can't be. But if that was the case, why should Moshe not be angry? Is there any avera worse than this? It makes no sense in this entire story. From the very beginning of it, based on the motivation that Klal Yisrael has to have this Elohim, right? And also from the conversation that Moshe and Aaron have afterwards, it's impossible to say that we're referring to avodah zarah mamish, that we're talking to about a real idol, something that they view as divine, as a deity. Another source, let's just skip the next paragraph and go to the one below it. Another point where the Ramban says it obviously can't be referring to a god. He says, Vayomer Ela Elohecha Yisrael Asher Ha'alucha. Right? Aaron, after the Egel is formed, he says, this is your Eloah, Yisrael. Again, I'm just not going to translate that because the term is ambiguous, right? That took you out of Egypt. Right? It makes no sense. The Ramban says this pasuk also, it shows us that there's more to this than we would think. Nobody is as foolish to think that the very gold that was in their ears, a few hours ago, that just got made into this cow statue. Nobody would think that this is what took them out of Egypt. Rather, what they were saying was, and we're going to get into more about what this means, the power that was represented by this image, that's what took them out of Egypt. Right, so that's essentially what the Ramban is pointing out. They're just clues on and off again that this couldn't possibly be referring to avodah zarah. You know, if you think about it more, I mean, we generally think, and sometimes that's a reaction to seeing these narratives of, oh, well, the taiva, the desire for avodah zarah, that's not something that we have anymore. In the Gemara, I think in Sanhedrin, the rabbis abolished it somehow. They got rid of it. We don't have that taiva, and that's why we have such a hard time understanding it. But the Ramban takes the approach here, I think it's a little bit more, straightforward, is certain things are just too absurd. Certain things, even if you want to say that there was a desire, or just a cultural, philosophy that was in the air at the time, that avodah zarah was something to do, even if that's the case, here it makes no sense to say that that's what's going on here. Nobody could possibly think the statue that was just created is what took them out of Egypt. It didn't exist until 5 minutes ago. And besides the absurdity of attributing a power to it, if you want to do that, fine. So then you could say that certain people had an error in their philosophical reasoning. But to say that this actually took them out of Egypt is absurd. So what exactly happened? What were they trying to do? So the Ramban says, if you go back up to that paragraph that we skipped, so he says, Aval ha'inin kamo she'amarti. Rather, the matter is, as I said, shelo bikshu ha'egel liyos lahem la'el mimisa mechaya. They weren't asking through this egel that they should have a god that actually kills and gives life. They weren't talking about the God. That they should accept that deity upon them. They needed something in Moshe's place to show them the way. And now I could understand the give and take between Aaron and Moshe when Moshe comes back down from Har Sinai. Aaron's claim to Moshe when he says, they asked me to make this and I made it, he's essentially saying the following. They asked me to make this being of power that should stand in your place, my master Moshe. Nobody knew what happened to you. They thought you were dead. And whether or not you would come back. They didn't know if you would come back. And therefore they needed a leader. They needed something to show them the way the entire time that you weren't with them. Perhaps, they didn't totally give up on Moshe, but I guess they pretty much did. But let's say, it could be that Moshe will eventually come back. They certainly will abandon this idol, and they would go after you. They know that you're the real leader. This thing is just a substitute in some way, right? But again, so what was Aaron thinking, and how is this going to work? What was their mistake? So we haven't gotten into that yet. We will. But Ramban just lastly he points out, and and that's exactly what happened. Once the nation saw Moshe come back down, they immediately abandoned the egel. They rejected it. They allowed Moshe to just take that egel and grind it up into pieces and put it in the water. He did somewhat of a sota test. We won't get into that here. Anybody see the Ten Commandments? It's not described in the actual Chumash, but I always remember it's a very powerful scene. You have not just the luchos breaking and the egel being ground down, and Moshe actually takes the luchos, he throws them at the egel, and that's what makes a big explosion. Very cool. But I don't know, it just reminded me of that. Just had to talk about it. So Moshe, he takes the egel, he grinds it down, he puts it into the water. Nobody got in his way, nobody argued with him about this. There's no mention of anybody, of Moshe having to even rebuke the people and tell them what they're doing is wrong. He just goes down and he does what he does. He doesn't say a word. Rather, just when Moshe comes down, he sees people dancing around the egel. All of a sudden, all the Jewish people, they run away from him. They see what happened. They realize how wrong they were. He takes the egel, he grinds it down, he puts it in the water, he makes them drink it. Nobody stops Moshe. Nobody objects to what he's doing, right? Let's say you want to take the approach that they were dealing with something that they viewed as a deity, as a god. So nobody would have let Moshe do this. They wouldn't let him get away with it. If they really believed that this image had some kind of divine power, they viewed this as their new god. So when Moshe comes down to grind it, they would stop him. They say, "What are you doing? That's my God, man." Right? Would he be able to just burn it and nobody would stone him or get in his way? So again, just the Ramban really forcing the point. Now we're going to start getting into exactly what was going on. But he just invokes again and again how this couldn't possibly be avodah zarah, couldn't possibly be something that they viewed as divine. Yeah.
I have a problem with the Ramban because, first of all, if they want a leader, they should just appoint another person. Why make a physical image after
right.
we were told you're not allowed to make any kind of image?
Mm-hmm.
And
So that's something we have to resolve for sure.
Aharon doesn't have the stature of Moshe, so there's of course a Midrash. The Midrash said Hur tried to stop them, they killed him, and therefore Aharon.
Right.
And when you see Moshe is like has a certain power that nobody else has as a leader that people wouldn't do.
Well, Aaron and Hur as well. They're both viewed clearly as substitutes.
But they're not the same caliber as Moshe. I mean,
exactly.
So I find that the fact that people were worshipping idols for centuries, and even Bnei Israel, after they were worshipping for centuries, the power of Avodah Zarah is still quite great. And the fact that they were punished so severely, and Moshe had to go up to Hashem and pray that they shouldn't be destroyed, shows that it wasn't just some...
So there's that tension, right? If the more you justify what they did, which the Ramban is going to do somewhat, you have to also resolve the fact of...
With the pshat, like why make an idol, make appoint a person, or why...
That's the second point, right? If we're dealing with their need for a leader, how does making a statue of a cow get them a leader? So the Ramban's going to get into that. We're going to talk about it, exactly how this helps that goal. But yeah, all we've done is reject the, I think, classical approach, and we haven't really talked about yet exactly how Ramban thinks things are going to work, and that's what we're going to get into now.
So why couldn't Aaron and Hur, because they saw by Amalek that Aaron and Hur actually, they were more powerful than Moshe there, sort of, they held up his hand. So they would be natural leaders. If they just wanted a leader, then Hur and Aaron are leaders.
So we'll see that Aaron, in fact, could be that leader that we're talking about. We'll see what the Ramban says. But it's also important to mention, when Moshe goes up to Har Sinai, before he does, he tells Aaron and Hur, you guys are in charge until I get back down. Right? So there is in some way a responsibility upon the shoulders of Hur and Aaron that they have to deal with this in some way or another.
Also, it sounds like Aaron's the one who suggested about the gold. It's not that they said, okay, here's our gold, make us a...
So that's in the next paragraph we're going to get to that, and just a warning, I guess, before we get into this. This next paragraph is Kabbalistic. It's in general, this is what Art Scroll typically will skip in translating, that kind of thing. It's more esoteric. The reason why you have to, and Art Scroll I think does in fact translate it here, is because this is actually a Kabbalistic paragraph, which is very key to understanding the Ramban's whole approach of what happened here. Usually in the Ramban's commentary he's going to get into some idea, and then he'll have like one postscript. He'll tell you some Kabbalah. And by the way, if you're initiated in Kabbalah, let me tell you some interesting stuff that doesn't really it's not required for understanding the pshat of what exactly happens in the story. Here's a situation where that's not the case, where to understand where Aaron is coming from, we have to, I guess, open our minds somewhat. And, Kabbalah, I guess, let's give a little bit of a brief introduction to Kabbalah. What it is essentially is how the world works, I guess. If I want to plug something into that outlet over there, so I know that that's what's going to get me energy for my laptop. I don't really know what the wiring is of the building. I don't know what's going to bring me that energy. I just know that that's what happens. Kabbalah tries to get into exactly how the world works, and it doesn't have a system of, I guess, logic in the sense that you and I know of it. It has to be a consistent system, within itself. But, in many ways, you can't ask questions on why is this like that, etc. when you read Kabbalah. The very definition of Kabbalah is tradition. This is what I have, this is what is told to me, I have to accept it. Right? So when we read this paragraph, he's going to say a whole bunch of ideas that we kind of just have to take. We're not going to be able to explain why something represents another thing, etc. But anyways, we're about to get into Aharon's thought processes, and it's Kabbalistic in some way. Yeah?
It was under the assumption that they didn't had in mind to make a golden calf. They threw in the jewelry, and whatever came in a golden calf happened to come out.
So Rashi's approach is that, and I think he has midrashim that back that up. The Ramban is not going to go into that approach, right? Rashi's approach, I think, is within the Gemara and Sanhedrin, that Aaron was really trying to just stall till Moshe would come. And he said, okay, let's get everything together. He asked the people, give me your wife's jewelry, etc., knowing that would cause fights, obviously. Women don't like parting with their jewelry. And, that would itself delay. And then when he would take the gold, he would throw it in and, make it a whole, process of putting it together, that it would take time. But somehow, I think the Gemara says that certain people that were in favor of making the egel, threw in some like magic spell, that all of a sudden the egel just magically came out. Right? Okay, so that's an approach. That's the approach of Rashi. That there were people that had, I think, perhaps a really evil intention from the very beginning. But the Ramban's not going to take that approach. He's going to say that Aaron, in fact, knew exactly what he was doing, and he did it on purpose, and he did it in a hurry. And we'll see why. Okay. So again, we're dealing with Kabbalah here. Certain things we're just going to have to take at face value. Aaron, who asher hotzi atzura hazos. Aaron, he was the one, like you said, Alan, he's the one that brought about this image. Right? The people didn't tell him whether or not they wanted a certain kind of animal. They didn't decide we want an ox or we want a sheep or a goat or something like that. And now, this is what the Chachamim mean when they say the following in the Gemara in Sanhedrin: Malamed she'ivu le'elohus harbe. They see from here that they wanted many gods, right? If you look at that pasuk that we quoted at the very beginning of the shir, Yelchu, to lead us, is said in the plural, that they, these Elohim, should lead us, right? So Chazal seem to take from that the Jewish people wanted many gods. So the Ramban explains it as follows: Ki him lo yadu b'ma yivcharu.
Many gods or many leaders?
Or the Ramban's going to say leaders, right? So I guess many leaders according to the Ramban's approach. So the Ramban explains, Kihim lo yadu b'ma yivcharu. They didn't know which one they should actually choose. I mean, it was many in the sense of that they had a lot of options, and they didn't know which one to choose. Ve'eza hatov lahem, right? Which is the right avodah zarah, which is the right animal that we should make an image of. Ve'akavana la'aharon haisa. So what was Aharon's intention that when he decided to make a cow and he went and did it? Mipnei sheYisrael hayu b'midbar chorev shemama. The Jewish people, they were in the desert. It's a place of desolation and wasteland. So destruction, desolation, that comes from the north. So that's, again, this is going to be one of those things that we just have to take at face value. Kedechsiv, he does establish that with a pasuk from Yirmiyahu. Mitzafon tipatach hara el kol yoshvei haaretz. This is Yirmiyahu in its literal sense and what's going on in its context there. Yirmiyahu is prophesying that the Jewish people are about to be conquered and attacked by Bavel, coming from the north. It happens to be that, technically speaking, it's not so clear that they came from the north. Geographically, Bavel comes from the east.
Northeast.
Or northeast, right? So we have to work that out from a pshat perspective.
The path is you have to go north because there's a desert in the way. You go north.
Right. So that's, I think, the classical explanation. Bavel is on its way conquering actually lands from north of Israel, coming from the north, even though their original homeland is, I guess, geographically east of Eretz Israel. But anyways, that's the pshat. She'ena kavana b'melech Bavel bavad. Ramban says this isn't just talking about the king of Babylonia alone. The pshat is there for sure, but it's more than that also. Kasher yira ben nigle min akasav. Right. It's more than just the nigle, the revealed aspect of what this Navi is saying. More than just that enemy of Bavel coming from the north, also from the left, and the left is a reference to north because in Jewish thought, I guess, and we typically think of forward as being north, I suppose, on a map. That's what's facing up. In the Jewish map, I guess, so to speak, I've actually seen this in some, Tanakh, forms of maps, that north is, the direction pointing up on the page is east. And that's viewed as the forward direction. I suppose in Jewish thought that's where the sun rises from. That's where the opening to the Mishkan, to the Mikdash is. So if I'm facing east, if that's my forward direction, my left is north. Right, so that's what the Ramban is referring to when he says Hasmol. The left, which is north, that represents the attribute of justice of God. The justice which visits upon people retribution for whatever bad they've done. And if you look at the Merkava and the Merkava, God's chariot, it's talked about in the first parak of Yechezkel and in other places as well. The Merkava, I guess, is your prime Kabbalistic source about how the world works. The Merkava is some symbolism and some manifestation of the way God operates in the world. And if you look, the northern-facing creature, the Merkava is a four-faced kind of chariot. The face that's facing north is that of an ox. So Aaron's putting all these pieces together. So Aharon thinks that the Machariv, the destroyer, which is represented by the ox, right? Your classic case in the Zichron and the Gemara is the thing that the animal that gores is an ox, right? So he thinks that creature that faces north, that represents destruction, that represents din, that very much parallels what's going on in this desert wasteland area, that's going to be what can guide the Jewish people now. Kisham kocho agadol, because there in the desert, that's where it has its most, I guess, manifest strength. Uviosam ovdim sham lakel yarach mimarom, and now they would worship through the eagle's, I guess, midah, through its attribute. They would serve, I'm saying lakel, even I probably should have for Shemos purposes spelled this with a kuf. They were going to serve God through that, who would bring upon them a spirit from up high. Now, where is that spirit being visited upon? I think there's a crucial, missing link here in the Ramban. If you look in the art scroll, Ramban, Rabbi Shavel in his translation, which we have here, doesn't make it so clear. Where is this ruach going to go? They have, art scroll has its bold words that are translating the actual text of the Ramban, and then their non-bold words is their, additional ideas to explain further. They say that this ruach is going upon Aharon. But the way they understand this, and I think it makes sense with the Ramban's approach, right? And like we mentioned, we have to resolve how the Egel is actually going to cause the Jewish people to have a leader. A statue is not a leader. The way they understand it is that the statue of the Egel is going to represent a certain idea, which Klal Yisrael will be able to, appreciate God through. And with that, a certain nevuah, a certain greater koach will get instilled within Aharon. That in many ways, like the Mishkan eventually ultimately becomes the place with which Moshe talks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where he receives a great level of nevuah and instructions of how to lead the Jewish people. So Aaron felt that the Egel was going to be able to serve that purpose for him to be able to be a sufficient substitute for the Jews.
Like the Kruvim, the way Hashem spoke between the Kruvim,
right.
Said, maybe here he'll speak through this.
I don't know necessarily that God would speak from a voice above the Egel per se, but Aaron felt that channeling the midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of din, through the Egel, which again, like we said, is represented through all these different elements that we have to just take at face value, that Aaron thinks that's going to give him the ability to lead the Jewish people.
And how about Shor is like Yosef? Because Yosef was Shor also.
I'm not sure what we would do with that here. What do you think?
I don't know, because Yosef was a leader also. I mean,
Yosef's a leader, that's true.
Yosef had a certain way, contrasting with the Yehuda.
Could be, for sure.
Especially in the Galut, the Mashiach ben Yosef. I don't know, because Yosef is Shor, so that's what I thought of it.
And now, with that in mind, this is what Aaron is doing. When he makes his Egel, he thinks this is going to be some mechanism by which he can become a better leader for the Jewish people. And he says, okay, holiday for God. That's very important, for God, Hashem, with Yud Kei Vav Kei in the actual Torah, Machar on the tomorrow. Aaron's intention, and he makes it absolutely clear, is that on the next day they're going to bring karbanos, and they're going to bring them to God, the real God. No idols, no avodah zarah. And what they were going to try to do through that, they were going to have some big ceremony by which they worship God, through which, and together with the energy of this, thinking about this image that the calf represents, when it's in front of them, they would think about this matter, and that would, I guess, allow them in some ways to channel HaKadosh Baruch Hu's message more clearly, and Aaron could be their leader. So anyways, like we said, Aaron's trying to make this in some way, this Egel, to be like a forced Mishkan. It's important to realize, the Ramban thinks at this point, nothing wrong has been done yet, which is kind of striking to us. We don't typically think that that's the case. We think the creation of the Egel is a big no-no, right? Even the Torah says, do not make any gods, don't make any idols before me, don't make anything to worship. But if you think about it, the way the Ramban explained it, Aaron's straddling this line very well. He makes an image of a calf. Right? There's nothing wrong with doing that. You can have a statue, you can have kids can play with a doll of a cow if they want. Aaron's making it absolutely clear we are not worshipping this cow, not by any means whatsoever. What we're doing is we're taking the statue and we're going to focus on perhaps a message about one midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from it, and try to channel that in our worship of God. These karbanos are to God and God alone. So in some ways, the Ramban has painted a picture here where Aaron hasn't done anything wrong yet. It's strange, but that's how he takes it.
I'm not comfortable with this Ramban.
She doesn't buy it.
It is
very apologetic. I don't buy it.
So we're going to actually come to again. So the Ramban is going to have to answer. So what went wrong? So far, if nothing bad has happened.
It's almost like a mediator, and we don't believe in that.
Right. So I think Ramban is trying to avoid saying it's a mediator. Why? He says Aaron goes out of his way to say Chag Hashem Machar, a holiday for God later, and the karbanos are not being offered to the idol. That would be avodah zarah. Of course, Aaron would never think to do that. But he says we're going to try to, in some ways, let's say, Jewish symbolism does manifest itself in some ways in our religion. We have that. I put on tefillin every day, right? So there are messages in that tefillin. It's supposed to represent something to me. It's supposed to get my kavanos going in a certain direction. I never think that I'm davening to God through my tefillin. I never think of it as an intermediary. Right? There's a difference between using something as a point with which to focus on a certain idea and actually using it to worship. Right?
And plus, the Egyptians worship the cows, so like they're bringing up an avodah
that might make it a little bit more awkward here, right? But That's not Aaron's intention, to be sure, right? But anyways, the Ramban's intention is that Aaron's making this as a symbol to remind them about a certain idea. Kabbalistically, we might not be able to understand it totally, but for whatever reason, Aaron thinks this is a crucial idea with which to gain God's favor and to get his, influence back instilled within Aaron, so that he can lead the Jewish people. How exactly it's supposed to work, we don't have to know the ins and outs. But Aaron had a certain kavanah, and to him it made sense. And it seems like, according to the Ramban, no wrong has been done yet. Okay, now what's the problem? What exactly went wrong? So the Ramban, he points out in the next pasuk, Vayar Aaron, the pasuk Hey. So Aaron saw when the people wanted to actually, they were bringing their jewelry back very nicely. They were putting it together very quickly. They were putting their efforts in making the idol. Now Aaron, as noble as his intentions might have been, as the Ramban explained, right, he saw that the people that were involved in the creation of the Egel, that wanted to help, they didn't have the best kavanah. V'kamuvana mizbeach. So Aaron, now he gets up, he makes a mizbeach, he makes an altar. V'kara chagla Hashem machar. Like we said earlier, he says tomorrow there's going to be a holiday for God. Sheyizbechu l'shem hamiyuchad al mizbeach asher banahu l'shmo. That there would be sacrifices made for the shem hamiyuchad, to the real one and true God. The mizbeach and the karbanos are going to be entirely for Kadosh Baruch Hu. We're certainly not building these mizbechos and bringing these karbanos for the ego, for this embarrassing thing to actually use it as a god. There's no kavanah to bring these karbanos for anything besides Hashem. And it could also be, you're probably familiar with this idea from Rashi, it could be also that when Aaron says that this should be this festival, this day of Karbanos should be tomorrow, that's to buy some time, to stretch things out a little bit. That perhaps Moshe is going to come down, and like we said, everybody will abandon the Egel immediately. If Moshe comes down, their purpose is to have a leader, and if the original leader comes back, they'll be happy. So, but nevertheless, what happened was the Jewish people, they got up early in the morning. They brought olos, they brought shlamim, they brought all kinds of karbanos. The Torah goes out of its way to say, when the people brought karbanos, they didn't bring karbanos to the egel, or they didn't bring shlamim to the egel. It just says, I think the language of the pasuk is vayalu olos v'yagishu shlamim. The word lo is never there. They brought korbanos. The matter that's being explained is mipnei shahayu behem mechavnim l'shem HaKadosh Baruch Hu kasher amar Aaron. Right? They had kavanah to worship God and God alone, like Aaron had intended. There were people among them that had that intention. That's one group. But there were other people actually that didn't have the best kavanah. Not Aaron, not certain people that were in this group, but other people in the group actually had intention that when they were making sacrifices, that they were worshiping this statue. They were worshiping the Egel. These were people that were doing avodah zarah mamish. Concerning those people, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu LaMoshe, God says to Moshe up at Har Sinai, Vayishtachavu lo, Vayizbechu lo. He says concerning those people, they're bowing down to it. They're bringing karbanos to it, to this Egel. Kihem HaKatan. There, God is referring to only the people that are doing serious averos, that are not doing things properly, like Aaron and certain people among Klal Yisrael. V'mulai haya Aaron hamakriv karbanos. It could actually be that Aaron himself was one that brought karbanos, perhaps even representing all the people. Amar stam vayalu olos v'yagishu shlamim. And right, the pasuk just says he brought olos, he brought shlamim. It doesn't say that it was directed towards the Egel in any way. Kihu mechavin l'shem Hashem. But Aaron had intention for God and God alone. Ve'im datam el ha'egel asher asu. But certain people in the crowd who provided the karbanos, who provided the animals, who are being represented by Aaron, their intention was that the karbanos should be directed towards the Egel, towards the statue of the calf. And those owners of the sacrifices, they invalidated them. It's very important. There's an element in halacha, in karbanos in general, that the intention of a person as the karbanos are being brought, either of the kohen or even the person that is volunteering the animal and bringing it to the kohen to be used, the intention of everybody involved has to be pure, and it has to be correct with regards to what the carbon is, how much time there is to eat it afterwards, all these details. And if a person is mistaken in their thought about what it should be, it could be entirely by accident. But if they're mistaken in any element of the carbon, it's entirely invalidated. So Ramban is saying here that perhaps even if Aaron is the one bringing the karbanos himself, the people who he's representing, if they have an intention for an idol as opposed to God, they're messing everything up. And this becomes not avodah to Hashem, but avodah zarah. Much bigger deal, much bigger avera. Okay, so that's the Ramban's take, and now just a summation that he gives in Pasuk Zayin. This is with regards to Hashem's telling Moshe, you better go back down there. The people are being destructive. Ki shiches amacha, your people have dealt corruptly. So, Amar Hashem LaMoshe, ki asu shtayim ra'os. God is saying to Moshe, they've done two bad things. Two mistakes that were made. Ha'akas ki shiches amacha. First is, like we have in the pasuk, your nation has become corrupt. V'in ha'ashchasa harisas binyan. What shachas means, it's like the destruction of a building. Uperish, its explanation here, I skipped a little bit where he just substantiates that idea using other psukim. We don't really need it so much. We can take his word for it. So, Uperish ha'ashkasa b'chan hadavar shekaru rabosenu mekatzit benetios. The explanation of this from a theological standpoint, what we're talking about with destruction in the sense of what the Jewish people are doing here, it's in the sense of what Chazal call mutilating the shoots. Interrupting the roots of our faith, perhaps. He's going to elaborate on exactly what that means. The second mistake that they made was that they made this golden calf, and that not that the making of it itself is the problem, but that they bowed down to it and they brought karbanos to it. The first avera that we mentioned, these mutilating the shoots. Lo yadana rak Hashem levado. That was only known by God Himself. Shu yodea ta'alim osleiv. He's the one that knows what's in the deepest recesses of our hearts, what we're thinking, what our motivations are. V'ashenis ma'asa hazovchem hachotim v'hem kasher keperashti. And the matter of the karbanos, however, that's the way those worked is like we said earlier, that they were directed towards the Avodah Zarah by some individuals. Now, most of Klal Yisrael, they all made a mistake with regards to Chet Ego. Like we said, the entire nation donated, golden rings, all kinds of materials for the Ego. And if it wasn't for the fact that everybody was involved in some way in this Avera, God wouldn't be seeking to destroy them if not for Moshe's interceding on our behalf and saving us. Those that were actually killed in the aftermath of the Egel, they were very few in number, at least comparatively. He had at least 600,000 males of army-aged Jewish people. He had around 3 million, perhaps, at Har Sinai at this as a part of the Jewish nation at this time. 3,000 of them, the Torah tells us, actually were killed because of this incident. So, percentage-wise, relatively in comparison with the rest of the group, it's very small. Most people made a mistake of the first kind. They had a mistake in their theology and the way that they were thinking, like we explained. But there are others, a minority, that actually did averos through action. So just to put it all together, the Ramban understands that everybody made a mistake in some form. They were all involved in the creation of this egel, and through it they all made a mistake, at least in some way in their thought process, which Aaron did too, apparently, was that they thought that they could access HaKadosh Baruch Hu by perhaps worshipping one of his midos, or focusing on one of his midos, an aspect of him. We see very easily how that can be a slippery slope, how that can fade into Avodah Zarah. Is it Avodah Zarah in the sense of viewing an idol as being a god, or even viewing the stars as being a power of significance that's worthy of worship? So it's not even on that level. It's a serious thing, and we take anything that even approaches in the slightest respect of idolatry very seriously. And that's why Hashem is upset at everybody here about what happened. But that's more minor in comparison to the people that were actually killed in the aftermath of the Chet Egel. The people that were killed are only the people that did this second Avera that the Ramban explains, actually doing an act in action of Avodah Zarah, of dedicating their karban, that they actually took action in offering it up, and having in mind this statue, that they were worshiping this statue. That was a big no-no. That's the people got killed for that, and that was certainly bad. But it doesn't really reflect on the entire Jewish people, right? Because it's a very small minority, and like we said, even people among that crowd that brought karbanos, some of them had kavana latova. They had an appropriate intent, that their sacrifice was to God, not to the egel. They wanted to access perhaps a certain idea, a certain midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by focusing on the egel and what it represents Kabbalistically, like the Ramban says. And that's wrong too, but it's certainly not approaching like the most severe form of Avodah Zarah. That's something that Hashem is very upset about, and perhaps that we still have to deal with in some way, why it's worthy of such tremendous punishment. But the Ramban is saying that's what everybody was guilty for, and that's why this is a horrible episode among the Jewish people. I think we finished with about 4 minutes before the actual rally upstairs, so made good time. Does anybody have any questions? Because I know this is like a very, very confusing and difficult Ramban.
No, it just doesn't fit, because you see the reaction of Moshe. He breaks the luchos, and then he has to go 40 days to plead. God says, I want to destroy them all, and Moshe has to beg and plead for 40 days. So that's not just like a little shtipping of, a bad idea. It's like some major, terrible, catastrophic sin.
The Ramban might leave us perhaps wanting in understanding why this was such a big deal. If he describes what they did as, being wrong philosophically in some way of how to approach God.
Reaction doesn't fit in with the
right. And
Hashem seems to think that they did do something wrong.
Right. I mean, Avodah Zarah is something.
I'll rebuild the whole nation from you, and Moshe.
Right. So let's start up the Moshe kids. And
also, Hashem was already telling him, Moshe, go down. They're doing something wrong. Why didn't you just tell them a little earlier before they built it? They're going to do something wrong.
Oh, the Ramban actually makes a point of that. I didn't quote any of those parts, but the Ramban makes notice to support his idea. When does Hashem tell Moshe, you better get down there, something's wrong? He doesn't tell them when the statue is made, on the first day.
When they're dancing already?
Right. Dancing is the next day with the karbanos. The reason why the Ramban says is because nothing wrong has been done yet. Like he says, the making of the statue, from a technical halakhic perspective, I don't see anything. This is something that's going to end in disaster. It's a very slippery slope, but we're going down here. But nothing wrong was done yet. So there's no need to tell Moshe, you better get down there until the next day, until the actual day of the festival, until the karbanos are brought. That's when he says something's wrong. There are some people among the Jewish people that are doing avodah zarah. You better get down there and stop it. So that's the Ramban's approach. Yes. So we're gonna finish now and.